I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Nick. I know I told you guys a little bit about him earlier, but he's a really good friend of mine. We met this past year at Tulsa Fair, and went through a lot that week, and then went to Texas State Fair and went through a lot that week as well. And Nick coordinates, is it still 7 divisions? Coordinates 7 divisions. He and his wife together do that, and they just had a baby. What was the day that you guys had a baby?
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Dude, dude, that's gonna be wild. Valentine's Day is gonna be a huge expectation in the future, so that's cool. But yeah, Nick's a great guy. He's not like I said earlier, he's not statistically in any one category the #1 service event rep, but all around, pound for pound, I believe he's the #1 service event rep in the company, and he hits all facets of the service event program, and had a massive January, mainly due to service events. So, Nick, if you'll go ahead and take the floor. If there's anything else you want to share about yourself, go ahead, and then the floor is yours.
Awesome, appreciate it. But yeah, I'm from Wisconsin, Milwaukee, so part of Central Region. But yeah, loved working with Philip Tice. We just met this last summer, and it was a blast. But yeah, here to talk to you guys about service events. Service events are literally my favorite part of the business as a sales rep. Super easy to do. You get to sit at a hotel or some sort of meeting room, and people come to you and you sharpen their knives. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, really there's 2 things for service events that get them booked. So basically the 2 keys is 1, your systems, and also just making sure your skill set for selling is, good, right? So for systems, really the main thing that I do is I send out an email, a text. So I use Acuity. There's some people that use Calendly as well. Either or work, but there's some people that use like a paper calendar. But you really got to have some sort of Acuity or Calendly or some sort of online scheduling app because it makes it easier for your clients and it makes it easy for you. I send out an email with the link in there and people just schedule. Most of my service events fill up now because I have so many people in my CRM. And it's usually the email. Sometimes the text does it, but like in the Milwaukee area, which is where most of my customers are, there's been times where I send out an email and I fill up 20 appointments for one day in about 4 hours. So, and it's just because my customers know that I do this service frequently, but they also know that if they don't sign up right away, they're going to miss out. They're going to have to wait till the next one. But yeah, the big thing is get on Acuity, send out an email. I send out an email 2 weeks before the event, and then I send out a text message, usually 10 days before the event. And then if I'm not full yet, then I actually make phone calls. So the big thing, let's say if you've only been in the business for a couple of years, or maybe you're new to events, or maybe you've been doing this for a long time, but you just don't have that many customers. The most important thing that you can do to fill up your schedule is make phone calls. I've got 3,000 people in the Milwaukee area that I service. So it's like super easy if I just send out marketing that, I fill up. But then there's other areas where I only have 100 clients, where if I send out an email, text, maybe I get 5 appointments. The rest of my appointments come from making phone calls and actually reaching out to my clients. So phone calls are definitely important. Phone calls are effective and never can be replaced, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're doing in the business. Phone calls are great. The other big thing too is when you're working at these service events, it's always good to have a full display. So every single time, even if it's a one-day event and I have 3 appointments, I'm putting a full legacy cookware set out. I put out a full ultimate. I put out a full flatware set. I put out all the accessories, everything, even if it's only 3 people, because if I set up a full display, I'm more likely to sell everything that's there. Where if I'm lazy and just put out a couple sets, less likely to sell as much stuff. So the other thing too, for service events, it's really important to have at least like 6 to 8 appointments. I find it, for me personally, based on my averages, if I have at least 6 appointments, I can make it a good day. But it's better to have 10 or 12 appointments just in case some people no show, because that does happen too. And then so just an example too, another system too that I also use is actually direct scheduling people into a service event after a traditional event. So I'm assuming all of you are doing events because you're all on this phone call here. But something that I just did, an example. So I worked an event in, it's like the west part of Wisconsin. It's called La Crosse, Wisconsin, little town, but they have a big boat sport RV show there that we do each year. And so I worked the event. It was actually, it butted up with net. So I had to, I left net and then got there a day late and somebody else covered the first day. But I worked 3 days, sold like 10 grand, which is pretty solid. And then after the event, I scheduled a service event. So the service event, I had 18 appointments scheduled. I had, so where those appointments came from, I had 5 sign up via email. I had 8 sign up from direct scheduling at the event. I had 2 people sign up through text and I had 3 people that were referrals. So my customer got the email or text, and then 3 people got that email or text from one of my customers, and then they signed up. So almost half of my appointments were signed up from direct scheduling from the event. And I only think I had 1 no-show. So people still showed up, which is crazy. So I know there's mixed reviews on direct scheduling, but I think it is very effective, especially if you're in smaller towns and you're only going to be there once a year for that event. Direct scheduling is awesome. So what I do is I have the quad folds from Vast Action. Philip, I don't know if you use those, but they're amazing. It's like a checklist of all the products that Cutco makes. So if you don't have them or don't use them, they're great. I highly recommend getting them. But what I do is it's got my phone number, my email, and my website on there, and a picture of me, my name and everything. And then what I do when I direct schedule an appointment, I write down the name of the hotel, I write down the address, and I write down the date and time of their appointment, even if it's tomorrow, right? So it's important that you write all that, because then you don't get the, oh, I knew it was at the DoubleTree, but I didn't know which one, or, oh, I didn't know where to go because there was no address and I didn't know, so I just didn't show up. You don't get any of that because they have all the information in front of them. They have the time and everything. Now, sometimes even if you do all that, yeah, sometimes you're still going to get some no-shows, but that's the best way to schedule a direct schedule. So highly recommend doing direct schedules. So out of those results, 18 appointments, I had 7 sales. So my closing ratio wasn't great. But I did sell 7,000. It was 7178. So a little over 7,000 CPO. My average order was 1025. My orders, what they look like, I had 4 smaller orders that were like 100 to 300 CPO. I had 2 Alti upgrades. So I think one was from a galley and the other one was from a homemaker. So that was awesome. And then my 7th sale was a bundle deal. It was a flatware set, an ultimate upgrade builder set. So it's 5 knives, 2 table knives in the ultimate block. And then also I sold a set on the family program. And that was a massive order. And that was my last appointment of the day, I believe, or second to last. So pretty massive order to end the day. So, so the great thing is if you give yourself a lot of chances, maybe you only write up 7 orders out of 18, right? Not the greatest closing ratio, but as long as you close big, then you're going to do fine, right? So that kind of leads me into like selling. So for selling at these, it's okay to have a low average, or it's not okay to have a low average order, right? But it's okay to have a lower closing ratio if it means you're providing really good service for a bunch of people, right? So obviously we want to close to everybody, but every once in a while you're going to get that customer that all they want is their knives to be sharpened and that's it. So the way that I see that client, there's a lot of people out there like, oh, it's that person's a waste of time. I'm never going to market to them ever again. And I never want to see that person again. Well, guess what? That person that didn't buy anything that you just created really good customer service for, they're going to be loyal to you forever, right? So how I see that client is great. They're going to get my holiday sale or my spring sale. And when they're ready to buy that homemaker for their daughter or son, they're going to call me or email me and they're going to order because I provided a really good service for them. And it happens all the time. We've tracked it, and there's like many people where they just don't buy in person. And then all of a sudden the sale comes around, they buy a couple pieces for themselves. They buy, sets on the family program and so on. So it's okay if you don't sell something to some of your customers. Obviously you still want to sell though, right? So it's like the important part is having a high average order. So obviously this one, my average order across the board is not 1,000, but for this event, I did a really good job closing big packages, right? So, and I think actually the 2 Alti upgrades in the bundle, they all happened after like 4 o'clock. So the beginning of my day really sucked, right? I was not closing. And then the last like 5 or 6 appointments, I just crushed it. So Alti upgrades. Do you know how to sell an Alti upgrade? Is it the first thing that you pitch to your clients? And do you believe that every single customer that you pitch to should own an Ultimate? So my mindset is you're nuts if you don't have an Ultimate set, because the pieces in the Ultimate are literally the best pieces that Cutco makes. Like, I literally don't think I could live without a boning knife. The boning knife is literally the best one for raw meat. You know, the veggie knife, it's awesome for squash and chopping. That thing's awesome. You know, how are you going to cut through frozen meat if you don't have a cleaver, right? Cleavers are freaking awesome. So there's, and all the other pieces, they're all great. 4-inch paring knife, it's always better to have that. You know, a small Santoku, because you don't always need a massive chef knife. Sometimes you just need something small to cut up a little onion, right? So have the belief, if you don't believe that everyone should own an Ultimate, make sure you use those pieces, because the Ultimate pieces are freaking stellar. So use Ultimate pieces if you don't believe in them. But yeah, Ulti upgrades. And then, do you know how to sell flatware? Do you know how to sell cookware? Are you excited about cookware? I'm super excited about cookware because it's made right in our backyard, just north of Milwaukee in West Bend, Wisconsin, which is pretty awesome. So we get to, you know, throw that in there. But, you know, if you don't use the cookware, use it. Like, I literally tell my clients, it's so easy. Do you know how to preheat your oven? Well, yeah. Do you know how to preheat your grill? Yeah. Well, guess what? Cookware, same thing. You just have to preheat it, and then food doesn't stick. It's really that easy. Like, can you be patient, Mrs. Jones? Yeah, I can wait a few minutes. Cool. If you can do that, cookware is going to work great. If you aren't patient and you want to cook in high and all that, it's not going to work. It's going to suck, right? But as long as you preheat your, you know, cookware, it's going to work great. So what I always do, Mrs. Jones, for cookware is, you know, if you're cooking eggs or something that, you know, is going to, you know, doesn't have a natural oil or juice. So like, you're making like grilled cheese, bread doesn't have a natural oil or juice, pancakes don't have a natural oil or juice. You want to use a cooking spray. But if you're cooking any meat or veggies or anything like that, don't have to spray it with anything, and it's going to work great. Oil's just for flavor. And that's really all I say about cookware. And then, you know, obviously you can play the cookware videos, which are great to do. But yeah, they're oven safe. They're dishwasher safe. They're oven safe up to 350. Fry pans you can throw into whatever. But the cookware is great, super high quality. And then Mrs. Jones too, if you find a way to warp that thing, like, just send it back and they'll give you a new one. It's the best guarantee that you can find on cookware. That's awesome stuff. So it's like, so the other thing too, so when I'm selling my display, I always have the packages out that I want to sell. So I've got my legacy cookware set all on the side table. And then on my front table, I've got flatware. And then I've got my cutting boards where I do all my sharpening. And then I've got my Ultimate set. And then I've got biz gifts. And then I've got all of our outdoor stuff. It's like garden tools, outdoor knives, a couple other pieces that go with the cookware, like my kitchen tools and stuff. That's all next to the cookware. And then I got all my gadgets next to, like, and I have lunch trays too. So this is kind of a hack. You can buy like a pack of 6 lunch trays and they're all different colors. Awesome for separating knives before you package them up and put them in the box. You don't mix stuff up. I know I've seen people that are like, we got like a piece of paper and they're like moving the knives over the table. And they're like, oh, hopefully nothing falls. Just get these lunch trays. It's like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 bucks on Amazon, and keeps everything separated, which is great. But so I put those on my table too. And that's how we keep everything organized for the stuff that we're sending in. But yeah, so get the quad folds. Those are also great too for service events, just because you can take an inventory of everything that they have. And then, you know, when you're pitching an upgrade, if they have like a customized homemaker, you know what they're missing, right? So you know which knives to pitch. Another couple things that you can do for selling is use terms like pamper, concierge service, you know, world-class service. So practice that. You know, when people come to your service events, it's a concierge service because you're literally bundling up all their stuff, sending it in for them. You know, so another thing too is something that I do preach and also, you know, teach customers. It's always good to send in a lot of stuff to the factory, because the factory is literally the best service that they can possibly get for their knives, right? So, so factory service. So let's say maybe you're doing a lot of service events. Maybe you maybe do one every year, maybe you do a couple in an area each year, and you have customers that come in and they're like, oh yeah, you know, you sharpened them last year and they're dull again, right? And I'm always like, hey, you know, if it's only been a year, they probably need to go back and be serviced by the factory, and they need to get a brand new factory ad, right? And the reason why we want to do that is because they're going to be like brand new, right? So they're going to literally grind off the edge and then put a brand new factory edge on. So it's going to be like a brand new knife. It's going to be like the knife. It's going to be like what it was when you originally got it when it was brand new. The factory is an awesome service, right? They're going to put a brand new factory edge on, or they're going to replace it with a new one. They might even do that, which is pretty awesome. So, and then the nice thing too, Mrs. Jones, is I'm going to send it in for you. So if you didn't bring it to a service event, what you'd have to do is you'd have to literally box it up, make little sheets out of like cereal boxes, and then after that, you're going to have to put them in a box. You're going to have to send them in the factory. You're going to, well, first you have to go to the, post office. You're going to have to find a box that fits all your knives. If you can't find a box, there's people that do a padded envelope, and that's obviously not good because then the post office guy is getting cut. That's not good. The mailman. And then, it's just not fun, right? And then you have to pay for shipping there and you have to pay for shipping back. So here's a great thing. I'm going to do all that for you, Mrs. Jones. All you have to do is pay for shipping. That's it, which you would have been. So you don't have to do anything. You're just going to bring your knives into the service event, or, you're here, you're just going to drop them off. These ones need to go in. So I'm going to send them in for you. And then, I know you're only going back with your turning fork today, Mrs. Jones, but hey, you get to eat out a couple of weeks. But, your knives are going to come back and they're going to be like brand new. So it's going to be totally worth that. So always good to send stuff into the factory. Don't try to sharpen everything. Something that I do like to do is, if they don't believe that you can service the knives, which sometimes clients are like, oh, well, last time I brought them in, you just told me to send them all in. And it's like, yeah, well, it's a good service, right? But another thing you can do is, sharpen one double the edge knife or sharpen a straight edge knife, because then they know, Nick can actually sharpen some knives, right? So, the spatula spreader, they're not using it that much, or the bread knife that they don't use often. Those are usually ones that are easy to sharpen. But if the points are wore off, or if there's nicks in the blades or anything like that, definitely have it sent in. Don't try to sharpen it because you're not going to be able to service it like the factory would. The other thing too is, the great thing. So are a lot of people doing service events, Philip, or not really?
We're some of us are, and we're just starting to really focus on this program, which is why I wanted you to get this message.
Okay, cool. Do a lot of people do service calls still, or not really?
Yeah, a lot of people still do service calls.
Okay, cool. So service calls are great, and service events do not replace service calls. I did service calls I've been in business for like 13 years now. I did service calls for 10, and I still do a couple of, I'll do probably 10 this year, but most of my service is done at service events. But I used to do a lot. Like I'd be doing 20 a week and doing a ton of them. Like when I won the Rolex in 2017, I was doing 20 service calls a week, or scheduling 20 at a minimum, completing 15, because obviously there's cancellations and no-shows. And I did that for an entire spring campaign, which is a lot of service calls. But the nice thing about service events is you can do those same service calls. So I do 20 service calls in a week and driving all over town, putting 40, 50,000 miles on my vehicle, where I can now do a service event, do all 20 of those appointments in one day, or maybe you do it in 2 days. And then you have the rest of the week to do other stuff, or maybe go to a different city or town and do another service event. So it just allows you to provide more service for more clients. That's the reason why I transitioned into service events, is because I got to a point where it's like, oh my gosh, I have 10,000 people in my CRM. If I tried to do service calls for every single person in my CRM each year, I'd have to complete like 27 appointments in a day, which isn't even possible doing service events alone. And that's working like 365 days a week, right? Or 365 days a year. A week, that'd be a lot. But no. So it's like, so I had to make a switch in my business and be like, okay, well, how can I provide more service for more customers? And service events was the answer, because now I'm not driving. So instead of doing 4 to 5 appointments in a day, I can do 15 to 20, and I can get all my no sales out of the way. I can get all my big sales out of the way, and I can still make it home before dinner. This is awesome, right? So that is the great thing about service events, is you're going to get all your work done in one day instead of like 5 or 7. So something that I realized is I can literally service like 6 times the amount of clients in a month by doing service events rather than doing service calls completely. Now, like I said, you don't want to just cut out service calls. There's some people that you may want to, so like key clients, I always go do service calls. I drive to their home because I know, I like spending an hour with them, and they're usually going to buy stuff if they're a key client. There's this lady She lives out in the middle of nowhere. It's like 2.5 hours away. But if she ever wants service, I always drive to her house because I think the least that she's ever bought was like $1,500. And I think the most she's ever spent in one appointment is like 6 or 7 grand. So it's like, yeah, whenever Carrie calls, I'm going to her house. Like, I don't care. Like, she gets the in-home service, but it's like, you know, that one lady that she always wants her paring knife sharpened like once every 6 months and it's like overkill. Yeah, she should be showing up to the freaking service event, not, you know, in-home service, right? So, so yeah, do service events. They're awesome. If you're not having success right away, don't get discouraged. It just means your skill set isn't there yet, right? So, you know, if you've done a couple service events, you know, maybe had a lot of cancellations, or maybe that's okay. Like, I was there too. You know, you're just learning. It's like when you're a new rep and you're like, oh, I'm going to go sell homemakers and ultimates to every single person I see. It's, you know, probably not going to happen. But once you learn how to sell to these clients, you know, past customers, and you get really skilled at it, service events are awesome. So, so yeah, and then it's the other thing too is, you know, I still have some clients that are like, no, I want you to come to I just had an email actually while Philip was talking. The lady's like, I thought you were gonna come to my house and sharpen my stuff. It's like, you know, hey, you know, 2020, I don't think I said that. That's when she bought. But, you know, obviously, you know, we've transitioned, you know, we're at a point where we can't service as many people. So, you know, I'd love to come to your house and I'd love to drive to everybody's house. If I did that for everybody, I just wouldn't have time for anything. I wouldn't even have time to get to everybody. So I won't be able to service everybody. So train your customers now that, you know, in-home service is great, but if you're starting to tell people at your events like, oh yeah, just so you know, we have this awesome service. Basically, we set up at a hotel for a day. You bring all your stuff into me and we service everything for free. And if we can't service it there, we'll send it in the factory for you. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is show up to a 20 to 45-minute appointment and we do it all for you. Isn't that awesome? Oh yeah, that's freaking sweet, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, we'll send a rep to your house. Well, guess what? Guess who's going to be emailing you? You know, Margaret's going to be emailing you saying, hey, I thought you were going to come to my house, right? So train your customers now, even if you're just starting now. If you're like, oh, I don't have enough customers to do service events. If you have 100 people, you can do a service event. If you have 50 people in there, you can do a service event. As long as you can get 6 data appointments, you can do a service event. And if you start training your customers now, I started training my customers 2 years ago, but I've been in the business for 13. If you've been in the business for 2 years and you start now, you're not going to have Margaret emailing you at 6 o'clock at night saying, hey, when are you going to come to my house and sharpen my knives? They're just going to ask when the next service event. And then, yeah, booking hotels, you know, book with other people on your team. It's a lot more fun too. You save more money too. Yeah, service events are a great layer to add to your business. It's a great way to provide service for your clients. And it's just a lot more easy to do than a ton of service calls, especially if you got to drive all over the place. So, yeah, that's what I got for you guys. But yeah, I'm happy to stand for any questions if you guys have any questions. Yeah, hopefully you guys got some nuggets out of that.
Yeah, man, that was actually a great message. I do have a quick question. So if you're at the booth, I think this is going to be helpful. If you're at the booth, customer walks up, I need my knife sharpened. What is the exact verbiage that you say to them to set proper expectations?
Yeah, for sure. So I say, okay, awesome. Are you from the area?
Yeah, I'm from the area.
Awesome. So here's the cool thing. So there's 2 ways that we do service. One, you can either send them in the factory. So yeah, you can send them in the factory. What they'll do is they'll polish up all the handles, they'll put a brand new edge on, they'll sharpen them, they'll send them right back to you. Turnaround time is about 2 to 3 weeks. You just pay for shipping there and back. If you like, I can send you the instructions for that. The other option, which is the more popular option, is we actually have a service event. We actually have one coming up on Monday. We're actually going to be at the hotel right across the street. So if you want, you just bring your knives into me. I'll sharpen everything for free for you. And then if anything has to go in, I'll send that stuff in too for you. But you won't have to do any of that. You won't have to box it up or package it or anything. I'll do all that for you. Fill out all the paperwork for you. It's super easy. If you want, I can send everything in for you. Otherwise, you know, obviously you can send them in yourself. What would you prefer to do? Would you rather send them in the factory or would you rather just stop at the service event?
Perfect. And then what if it's you know, March right now and you're planning on doing a service event in a month? what is your verbiage for that? Because
Yeah, so it's actually the same thing. Instead of it being like, oh yeah, we'll be there on Monday, it's like, oh, well, we're actually doing a service event in about a month. So if you want, I can schedule an appointment now. Otherwise, I can put you on my list here, and we'll follow up with you, and you can always schedule one later. It's up to you. Do you know what your calendar looks like on this date, this time?
perfect.
Just I direct schedule, but if they're, if it's like 6 months out, then yeah, I get all their information, put them in my CRM, and then they sign up later.
Yeah. So I switched to doing this. I switched to doing this like 3 years ago. Even though I'm still doing service calls, it's easier to drop down to, hey, I'll actually just come to the house and do it if you're not doing a service event. But it's harder to go from, hey, I'll come to your home, to, hey, you have to come to me. Right. It's not super difficult, but it's just a better transition. So promise the service event, right? But then offer a concierge service of, hey, like, by the way, I didn't have enough people interested, so I'm actually just going to come to your house if that's better. That makes sense.
So if you'd rather do a service call, that's totally cool too. If you got the time to do it, awesome. That's a great option too. But yeah, it's always good to try and, load up your service event so you have a full schedule. And then, yeah, I mean, that's what I recommend.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay. So do you say anything to set any expectation of that when they come in, like there's an opportunity to buy, or is it just come sharpen and then they think, oh, I'm just coming in? Because here's the thing, like I guess that's question number two, or one. Question number two is, what do you do to prevent, oh, my daughter's just going to bring them, or like I'm going to drop them off, I'll come back and get them later, but mainly like the person who does not do the cooking is the one bringing the knives, and it's not someone who would buy. Like, how do you prevent that from happening?
Yep. Yeah. So usually they ask like, oh, is it cool if I just have my son or daughter drop them off? And I say, oh, well, it actually needs to be the person that uses them, just because we go through and we, actually explain like what to use the knives for, and we educate if there's something wrong with them. We want to make sure that we can tell you, what to do in the future. So yeah, it actually needs to be you need to be there if you're the one that's using them. So yeah, unfortunately, son or daughter won't work if they're not the people that are using them. So yeah, is there a different time that would work? Otherwise, I can always, put you on my future customer list, and we can always find a date that works better later too, if that's easier for you. So that's how I would handle that. And then I don't really I know a lot of people, they set an expectation like, oh, just, I'm going to show you some of the new stuff, which you definitely can if you want to. I prefer not to, because I'm like so service first mindset heavy that I'm like, I don't even care if they show up and they just want the knife sharpened and leave. Like, I really don't care, because it's another customer that I'm adding to my database in my CRM. So, if I've got, Judy that's 82 walking up to the booth and she needs her paring knife sharpened, guess what? I'm going to help the little old lady out, and, I'm going to sharpen her knives, because you never know. She might want to buy a family program or something else like that too, or an ultimate upgrade. You never know. So, I never I'm just like, I want everybody to show up, because if I provide a lot of service, I'm going to sell. It doesn't matter who shows up. And the other thing too is, like, sometimes you'll run into people that are like, they're at the show, they're at the fair, it's super busy, and then they get to your booth and they're like, I need my knife sharpened. How do I do it? And they're like, come on, like, what do I need to do? And it's like, oh, well, you can send them in, or if you want, I don't have time to sign up for an appointment. It's like, oh, well, it's, it takes like 2 seconds. Otherwise I can shoot you an email. It's like, oh, just shoot me an email with your calendar. I'll sign up. It's like, okay. And then it's like, that lady's not signing up. And then you send the email right away before, like, as the customer leaves, you send them an email with your calendar link. They sign up. Like, I've had that happen so many times where they come in and I'm thinking this is probably be a waste of time, and they buy like galleys on the family program, or homemakers, or they buy an ultimate upgrade. And at the event, they were like, there was no way in hell that I was going to sell to them. But now that they're at the service event, they got 30 minutes with me. They're more relaxed. They're not in a rush to get to the next thing. They're open to buying. So yeah, I don't really pre-qualify or, set any expectations for the customer. I'm just like, yeah, come on in. Obviously we're going to service your stuff. And obviously, we'll have all this stuff. Like, a lot of people, they know that you're going to have this stuff out. Like, they're not going to show up and be like, oh, I thought you were just going to sharpen this stuff and then I could just leave. Right. You'll actually find that most people will say, like, oh, is all this stuff going to be at the service event too? And it's like, yeah, it'll all be there too. It's like, okay, great. We'll talk then. Right. So another thing, so after I sign up my service calls at service events, I just say, you want to check out some of the new stuff before you head out? And they're, that's when that question usually comes up. Like, oh, is all this stuff gonna be at the service event? Yeah, well, can we just check it out there? Yeah, that's cool. So
Cool.
Hope that helps.
I had a question.
Yeah, two real quick ones. What are your appointment time frames? Are you doing 30, 45, or an hour time slots?
yeah, so I am very, very efficient with my appointments. So I do 30 minutes. I highly do not recommend doing 30 minutes until you get used to doing service events. So I recommend doing 45 minutes or an hour. And then once you do get efficient or you have a sharpener, then you can always get down to 30. But yeah, 45 minutes to an hour is definitely the best for most reps.
Perfect.
Okay, and my other question was, when you're doing service events, are you sharpening the knives yourself, or are you getting someone to sharpen for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually sharpening myself. Every once in a while, my wife comes and helps, or sometimes I have a rep on the team help. But most of the time, I'm sharpening myself, and I'm extremely liberal with what I send in. So I'm like, yeah, I will send in as many knives as I can, but sometimes I'll still sharpen one or two. And then the other thing though, too, is if you get a set of knives and they're like still really sharp, I don't even touch them. I'm like, oh, these are still really sharp. So they actually don't even need sharpening. It's like, oh, okay, great. But yeah, I do all the sharpening myself.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep. And I think it's best to sharpen yourself if you're cool with that, because it allows you to build some more rapport with the customer and show them all the knives that are damaged or the teeth that are worn down, and like they're like with you with the service, right? Really, really easy for building rapport. Question? Anybody else?
I got time for probably one or two more.
Yeah. I have one big question that everybody's not thinking about, but is important. How do you limit cancellations? And on the back end, how do you handle a cancellation?
Yeah, so Acuity is great. If you spend the extra $25, they send a text and an email reminder. You don't have to do anything. The system automatically does that. So if you didn't know that, highly recommend getting Acuity and spend the extra $10 a month to get the text reminders. That's one way to prevent cancellations. Is it more of a somebody that says, oh, sorry, I can't make my appointment, or is it a no-show? Or both?
If somebody like Devin had one Sunday and they just texted him the morning of, can't make it. That was it. Like,
Yeah.
what is your verbiage to handle that? Because like, it's a special service for them to be there.
Yeah. So, I mean, if somebody's like, oh, hey, something came up, can't make it. I just say, oh, well, I'm going to be here from this time to this time. Is there a different time that works for you? So I'll try to rebook them at a different time. And if they say, oh, no, it's not going to work today, then it's like, oh, okay, no worries. I'll let you know when I'm back in the area for service, and you can always grab an appointment then.
Cool. And then what if someone no-shows you? How do you handle that situation?
I call and text them. So after like usually it's like 5, 10, 15 minutes, somewhere in there, after their appointment starts, I call them and I double tap. And then if they don't answer, then I text them and I just say, hey, this is Nick with Cutco. Just wanted to see if you are on your way for your appointment, or if you're having trouble finding the hotel. I had you set for 3:30. Let me know if you're having trouble finding the place. Right. And it's always like, oh my gosh, so sorry, I totally forgot. And then I try to rebook them if I have an open spot. So it's like, oh, no worries, I'll be here till 7. Are you able to sneak in anytime between, now and 7? I'll just sneak you in between appointments. Or, hey, I have a 5:30 appointment. Can you still make it in? And there's many times where I'll still rebook them. But if it's like they're not making it, then it's like, oh, okay, no worries. Well, I can get you the next time. Now, if they no-show me like 5 times or even 3 times in a row, then I'm like, hey, maybe it's better that, we don't do this, right? How about this? I'll call you and we can either figure out a time that's going to actually work, or, it's somebody that you could also go and do a service call for. But I typically then, Acuity gives you an option to make it so they cannot schedule an appointment themselves, where they'd have to actually physically reach out to you. So that's another way to handle that too.
That's cool. And then I have one more question, if you're okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna take one more.
Do you use Cutco tablecloths, or do you use like the banquet tablecloths that the hotels provide?
I use Cutco tablecloths. So I'm like, no linens, no nothing. I need 6-footers. Do you have them? If they say no, then I'm hauling my own tables in. So I always use my 6-foot tables. I use the tablecloths that Joseph Rodriguez makes, the fitted ones. So I use those. And yeah, I'm always using the Cutco ones.
Cool. Are they raised up or are they just regular height?
Regular height, because if you raise them up, then you're gonna be like sharpening like this, right? So yeah, I keep them so the
I know the tablecloths are kind of like
up at the bottom. What was that?
the tablecloths are just too long to do that. You just like crunch them up or like fold them under or something.
Yep, yeah, you can just fold them under, but it's not like nobody's gonna walk in and be like, oh, look at these
Yeah.
Cutco tablecloths, right? So yeah, so I always keep them at just normal like seating height for a table, which is no PVC pipes, no table risers or anything, just normal, just the table and the tablecloth. That's it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Nick. If anybody has any other questions, I know we're over on time. I'll just shoot you a text myself and get that for them. But we really appreciate
Awesome.
your time today, dude. That was really good. So,
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, hopefully you guys learned something. And yeah, if you guys need anything, my email, if you have any questions, you can email me. My email is knifeguynick@gmail. So definitely happy to answer any other questions. Just shoot me an email. Totally open to answering anything about service events or anything else. But yeah, crush service events, add them as an extra layer to your business, and you will be happy, and your customers will also be happy with your service. So